This is the brand new Hobbywing Fusion Mini 16, and if this thing turns out to be any good, this could end up being the best brushless upgrade you can get for your Grom or Losi Nascar. Will it actually be any good? Let's find out. The real beauty of this system lies in its simplicity, because as you can see, all you get is a motor. That's because the ESC is actually built in. And if I've interpreted the specifications correctly, this should be a direct drop-in, including using the original pinion and the original motor mount. And the beauty of this is you don't have to figure out where to put a new ESC or even remove the original ESC. All you're gonna need is this and a receiver. Now, speaking of specifications, this is a sensor motor and it does use FOC technology because this is really designed for crawlers, but it has a regular basher mode, so we should be able to use it no problem. This is gonna be 30 amps continuous, 80 amps burst. The motor itself is 3000 kV, which is a little bit low, but we should be able to handle that with gearing. And then opening the roadmap of a manual, we can see this is 2 and 3S compatible. It does have a 7.4 volt BEC at 4 amps. And unlike a lot of these small systems, has a ton of programming options. The first thing we're gonna be trying this in is my custom little Big Rock. This is a Granite Grom with Mojave arms and Mojave wheels and tires. This should give us a good indication of how this will handle in a stock Grom. Then we're gonna jam it in the much larger, much heavier infraction Grom that I made. This is created from the Losi Nascar chassis with bigger tires and a different body, and this should really put that little system to the test. Hobbywing rates this thing up to a generous 4 pounds vehicle weight. As you can see here, our Granite with battery is going to be about 1.8 pounds. Obviously, the infraction is going to be quite a bit more than that, but I still think we'll be under that 4 pound weight, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised about that total weight. Other really nice features about this is that it is IP65 waterproof. That means this thing's pretty much impervious to dust intrusion and good for water jets, but not complete immersion. This should be able to handle pretty much any off-road condition. We've also got a separate programming wire. This is for adjusting drag brake. This is primarily for crawlers, but it is nice to have. The switch is their lower end switch with a set button. The nice thing about this switch though is if you damage the switch itself, you can actually bridge the connections and have the ESC on all the time like a Castle ESC. You can't do that with the switch that has the button on it. And then finally, we've got an EC2 connector here. Unfortunately, this isn't going to be compatible with the IC2 connector. We can make it compatible, though I'm not going to recommend what I'm going to do. Speaking of which, we are going to use the stock battery at first, just to see how inexpensively we can do this upgrade. I'm excited to see how this thing's going to work. Let's get it installed. Now, if you're replacing the stock system, when you pull this off, you'll be removing this motor. As you can see, the motor is actually a little bit bigger, but keep in mind that on these brushed motors, a lot of this can is not actually taken up by motor. You can see there's a fan in there, and the motor itself doesn't actually start till here, so you really only have about that much motor in there. Of course, this also has the ESC in it, so the motor is also probably going to be about that long, but being a brushless motor, it should be more efficient and more powerful. I do want to run a 19-tooth pinion on this, so we're going to go ahead and grab the motor mount out of the Losi Nascar. If you've never removed one of these center brace top plates before, they can be really tough. If you get a screwdriver here in the front, you can pry it up and that'll start to remove it, and then you can usually just wiggle the whole thing off, assuming of course you took all the screws out. Now it should come off. There we go. For the most part, there's a decent amount of room in both the Losi Nascar and the Mojave, but in the Granite and especially on the Typhon Grom, there's not a lot of room under the hood, and having that all-in-one system should really make packaging more simple. This motor does have 3 different hole mounting options, and they've even got an adapter plate for mounting to larger hole patterns. Fortunately for us, we don't need that, as this mounts right up. When you're using these stock Grom screws, be very careful you don't over-tighten them. These screws do tend to be a little bit more brittle than I would expect, and I've actually broken a couple off in motors, and that's no fun. We're going to be running the 19-tooth pinion that comes on the Mojave and the Losi. The Typhon and the Granite come stock with an 18-tooth pinion. However, we've got the Mojave tires on here, so 19's the way to go, especially given that this is a fairly low kV motor. And we'll make sure that lines up. Again, the beauty of this is all of the stock hardware will work with it. And as you can see, it fits in here perfectly. This Keenso motor and Quick Run ESC are a great combination. They are similarly priced to this Hobbywing system, but unlike this Fusion, this ESC is not waterproof. I really want to test out the waterproofing on this, and unfortunately one thing that isn't waterproof is this receiver. There are a lot of different ways you can waterproof a receiver. First thing you need to do is take it apart. This one's pretty easy. It's just got 4 tabs. Sometimes they have tabs, sometimes they have screws. Occasionally they don't actually come apart, but they usually do. Now we just need to push the guts out. There are a lot of different ways to waterproof a receiver. We're going to try something I've never done before. Normally I would just use conformal coating as it works really really, really well, but this stuff smells and acts suspiciously like nail polish, so I just got my girlfriend's favorite nail polish, and let's slather some of that on here and see how it works. You're obviously going to want to do this in a well-ventilated area, and you want to make sure you avoid the pins and any features on the board that actually locate the board in the case. You can see there are two little holes here. Those locate the board in the case, so we definitely want to avoid getting any nail polish in those so that we can actually put it back together again. All I'm doing here is just putting one nice thick coat of nail polish all over the entirety of all of the boards. This is just regular old nail polish. You do this at your own risk. Conformal coating is designed to be safe for circuit boards. Nail polish certainly is not. I think it'll be fine though. What's your favorite method of receiver waterproofing? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're down there, why don't you go ahead and get subscribed if you enjoy videos like this. Gonna get the edges of the boards, gonna get the back of this one. One nice thing about this red nail polish is it's really easy to see where you've covered and where you haven't. The conformal coating is UV reactive, but this is a lot easier because this is normal light reactive. Here we go. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to get this thing outside to dry because it absolutely stinks. While that's drying, let's go ahead and put the rest of this together. Sometimes these center braces can be easier to put in if you put the motor in the center brace first. On this Granite, I've had this apart several times, so it should go together fairly easily. There we go. And she's rolling smooth. Unfortunately, unlike IC5 and EC5, EC2 and IC2 are not compatible with each other. The pins are the same size, but the plugs just don't go together. So for testing, because like I said, I really want to use this stock battery to begin with, we're just going to modify this. So as you can see, the pins are the same spacing, so they will technically go together. I don't recommend you doing this because now you can very easily plug this in backwards, and that would fry your ESC. But for testing purposes, this should work just fine. And while we were doing that, the nail polish had time to dry. This looks great. Let's get this back together. Hopefully it'll just fit right back in there. And yep, it does. And this should be nice and waterproof now. Let's get it installed in the car. Because we have no ESC to worry about, I can just mount this right where the ESC would normally go. Obviously, if you have your stock ESC in here, you can mount it on top of it or somewhere else around it. Interestingly, this ESC did not come with 3M VHB. It does come with 3M double-sided tape, but it's not VHB. I've noticed Hobbywing's been doing that a lot lately. I really wish they would stick with VHB because it really is the best. And there we go. That's probably the most tidy install I've ever done in a Grom. It looks great. Again, if you make this modification to your pins, you do so at your own risk because you can plug this in backwards, so be really careful. I suspect this will be in crawler mode out of the box, but let's find out. And as you can see right off the bat, this definitely has a drag brake on, but let's test out that FOC censored mode. This should crawl really nice and slowly right up over my hand. Yeah, and other than having the open differentials, it did it just fine. Obviously, that's not what we want, so let's get this reprogrammed and then take it out. Okay, so it turns out, as usual, unfortunately, this LCD program box doesn't work with this ESC. I'm pretty disappointed in this because I've had more ESCs not work properly than work properly with this thing. Fortunately, we've got the good old LED program card, and that works just fine for changing the settings, which you can find in the manual. We're gonna go forward reverse with brake, auto LiPo cell count, high LiPo cutoff voltage. We need to reverse the motor rotation. We're gonna set the PEC voltage to 6 volts so we don't burn out our servo. Drag brake force is going to be disabled. We're gonna go max reverse force to 100%. We'll try max brake force at 60% and leave everything else to the defaults. That's it for the setup. Let's see if we can beat the 17 or so miles an hour these things go stock. Okay, stock 2S battery, let's see what we get. Okay, it's definitely faster. I wouldn't say it's a lot faster, but it's definitely faster than the stock brushed system. Of course, most of us are gonna be doing this on 3S, so let's bring this in and see what we got. Okay, 22 miles an hour, that's definitely faster than stock, but like I said, most of us are gonna be running 3S, so let's see what that does. In order to do that, we're gonna have to switch this over to an XT60, so you definitely can use this system with the stock battery. I would probably suggest gearing it up a little bit as it feels like it's gearing limited, but in my experience with other systems, 3S is really the sweet spot for this platform, so we're just gonna go straight on up to that, as I'm sure that's where most of you guys are gonna end up with this upgrade anyway. This connector does feel a little oversized for these wires, but it should work. So now let's put a nice juicy 3S in here and see what she's really capable of. All right, let's see what 3S gives us. Oh, that's a lot more pep. Yeah, it feels good. Give her one more. Yeah, she's nice and quick now. Let's see how fast that was. All right, 33 miles an hour. That's just about perfect for a little car like this. Let's see how it bashes. Time to test that water resistance. You know, for such a small system, I'm pretty impressed with this thing, but now let's really put it to the test. Unfortunately, I don't have to remove this switch because, like I suspected, this non-VHB did not hold. Overall, though, I'm definitely impressed with this little system so far. The motor did get pretty hot, but that was kind of worst case scenario. No airflow, fairly aggressive gearing for 3S in deep sand and tall grass. But things are about to get even worse for this poor little guy because now it's going in here. This custom infraction Grom that I built is bigger and heavier than any Grom that exists. And if this little guy can survive 3S in this truck, it can survive 3S in any Grom. To give this poor guy a fighting chance, I am going to reinstall the stock fan. Given that everything but the Granite Grom comes with this fan, I think that's fair. And of course, with the soaking we gave it earlier, we're going to be testing the water resistance of the receiver and the motor. Get some proper VHB on this power switch so it doesn't fall off again. Pop our freshly charged 3S back in and see if this thing can take the pressure or if it's going to have a meltdown. Okay guys, first of all, I want to say that I do know that bashing area was a little bit too rough for this car. We had a big storm come through here recently and everything has changed. Now that being said, how did this little system do? Overall, I'm very impressed with it. This car is very big and this system's pretty small and it handled it very well on 3S. As you can see here, the temperatures never really got over 150 degrees, which is just fine. I think this fan really helped, and if you're going to be running anything on 3S, you really will need a fan for it. But is this the ultimate Grom power system? I'd say that depends. If you're looking for big crazy power, Castle's probably going to be the way to go, but this is a lot of money. If you're looking to go cheap, this Keenso 3800 kV motor you can get on Amazon, and this 10BL60 ESC is a great choice. However, neither one of those are going to give you what you have here, which is a very compact, waterproof, $60 ESC and motor combo that's going to work great on a 2S setup and any mild 3S setup, and is just a general overall fantastic Grom basher. This thing works with the stock motor mount and with the stock pinion, so if you're looking for cheap, easy, waterproof, and effective, this Fusion 16 system is probably the way to go. And if you're looking for some more entertainment, one of these videos is probably the way to go.